All right, so now we are going to be in session 2 of unit 3, and we're going to deal with what are called clipping masks. So let me explain what a clipping mask is. I'm just going to do this with this picture over here for a minute. You're not going to do this part, so just watch. But what a clipping mask is, well, first off, what is a mask, right? So in Photoshop, you can hide certain parts of things. We call that masking them. So if I draw a shape, I'm just going to draw a circle like this. By the way, when we're doing masking, be sure you have no stroke up here. So, before I mentioned stroke, I never use this stroke button up here. I only ever use the one over on the layers panel because sometimes this one really messes things up. So if you're ever having trouble, like if I drew another shape and it looked red, it was probably because of this stroke. So be careful on this. So I'm going to take the stroke off, but you don't want to have a stroke on it when you're using it as a mask. What a mask is it only shows the part that's filled in. Okay, so in this case, I have this big circle here. I need to put it right next to the girl. So I'm going to take it and put it right next to the girl, decide where I want it to be, and then put it under it. So the rules with a mask is the part that you want to see is the part that's covered and filled in. Okay, everything else will be masked, which means hidden. And when we set it up, we put the picture on top. And then the shape will be hidden by the picture. So the picture, the thing you're putting down in the shape, goes above the shape. And then it's actually going to have an arrow pointing down to the shape saying, I'm going in there. Okay? So I've got my girl here. I've got my shape here. I'm going to click on my girl layer and create a clipping mask. You can do this a couple of ways. One way is to right-click in the gray space and go to Create a Clipping Mask. Okay? To get rid of it, you right-click it, and you say Release Clipping Mask. In Photopea, to get rid of it, you right-click it, and Clipping Mask just has a check mark. So you just click it again so it's not check marked. But it's called Release Clipping Mask in Photoshop. Okay? So now it's out of there. It's not in there anymore. The other way you can do it is by using the Alt key. So if down by my keyboard, I'm going to look down and press Alt, and then I'm going to point my mouse ever so carefully right there at that line between the two layers. So in Photoshop, you get a little square with an arrow. You don't get any cues at all in Photopea, but it does still work. You just have to click right on the line. So once I get that, while I've got my Alt key held down, I'm just going to click my mouse. And that puts it in there. And if I click my mouse again on that line, it gets it out. Okay? So there's the two ways to do it. You can hold down Alt and do it and click to put it in or take it out, or you can right-click on the upper layer where the picture is and create the clipping mask. And then notice when there's a clipping mask, see there's an arrow right there. Can you see that arrow? That little arrow right there is indicating to you that this is indeed clipped inside the thing that's below it. Okay. And then if we wanted to, we could add layer styles or whatever on the shape layer, not the picture layer, because technically the picture is way out here, right? So if I wanted to put a drop shadow or something, I need to put that drop shadow on the shape layer. See how it's going around the shape? Because if it went around the picture, that part is masked out and you cannot see it. So that wouldn't be useful. Okay, so the other thing you have to remember is be very careful, because if you start moving stuff around and you accidentally put something down in between these layers, you're going to mess things up. See, things are disappearing because you can't have multiple things down inside of a clipping mask like that. Okay, I'm going to undo that. If you do need multiple things, then you need to turn them into a smart object and then use that smart object in the clipping mask. And to do that, all you have to do is just select the multiple layers, just hold down Control and keep clicking all the layers that you need. And then you just right-click and turn them all into one smart object. And then you can use them in a mask if you needed to. Okay, so let's do the one that we're actually going to do for this project. Let me release this clipping mask, and I'm going to delete this ellipse. I'm just going to drag it to the trash can. And then what we're going to do for this one is we're going to draw a snowflake, which we're going to be adding in as a shape. So if you have your snowflake from the previous lesson, if your snowflake has that red around it, then that's not a good thing. That means that that stroke is on there. Now, if it's the same color that your fill is, you're good. Okay? If it's the same color that your fill is, then you're good. You don't have anything to worry about. But if you have a stroke there, that stroke overtakes the shape and it does not work with the clipping mask. So once again, I'm going to go to my custom shape tool. I'm going to go ahead and load up. I have two different sets of snowflakes in there, so it depends on which one you're using. I've got snowflake shapes for free. I'm going to come down here and click one, and I'm going to drag it and put that in there. Okay, see how it has a red on there? I got to get rid of that or it's not going to work. Okay, let's go ahead and name this one Snowflake. And then we are going to find the thing that we're going to clip inside the snowflake, which is going to be the sky. So I'm going to turn on my sky layer, which is stuck underneath all these things, and I'm going to drag it on up. So again, you should already have a snowflake layer. Make sure it's named, put it at the top, and then make sure there's no stroke on your snowflake layer. Because if there's a stroke on there, this isn't going to work. You're just going to see the stroke. Okay, now we've got the snowflake layer on top. We've got it positioned, we think. So let's figure out where I want the snowflake layer to be. Let me click on my snowflake layer. This is where you might not want to have auto select layers on, just so that you can grab a hold of the right things. We're going to put this way down in the corner, like so. Now, decide where you want your sky to be. If you want like the pretty bright part of the sky, we need to scoot this over a little bit. Whatever part your snowflake is the part that's going to show in the clipping mask. Okay, now we have to flip these layers because the sky has to be on top. The picture gets clipped down into the shape, right? The arrow's going to point down into the shape. So sky layer goes up here. Now I'm going to clip it. Remember, you can right click and create a clipping mask, or you can hold down Alt and pop it in there. And there it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a nice little drop shadow here to my snowflake. Okay, let's look at this same thing in Photo P. So I'm in Photo P where I have my snowflake already. I'm going to move my sky layer. I got to turn it on. Move my sky layer up here. Now I already have my snowflake where I want it to be. So where does the sky layer go? On top. So drag it above the snowflake so you can't see the snowflake. Right click out here in the gray space and we're creating that clipping mask. So just check clipping mask and now it's in there. And if I click on the snowflake layer, I can now go to my layer styles button and add my drop shadow and hit OK. Now it's going to have all those little lines on there that you can see. So you might want to click off of it so you don't see the edges. There we go. And now we've got that little sky inside of that little snowflake. Okay, one last thing that we're going to do here to end this session, we are going to go ahead and remove the background. So this is a review part here. We're going to turn on our ski silhouette and put it up above everything. Now make sure you don't get it stuck in here. Remember, we don't want it stuck in there. Make sure it's up out of there. If it gets stuck, remember, you just have to release the clipping mask. So I'm going to right click and release, or if I'm in Photo P, just right click and click clipping mask again to get it out of there. Now this is a smart object, so I cannot use my eraser, right? Now if I'm in Photoshop, I can use the magic eraser, which is what I'm going to do. It's saying no because I need to rasterize. So I'm going to right click here and rasterize the layer. And then because I'm in Photoshop, I can click on the white background and bam, it's gone. Now I am going to click on my move tool, hold shift, and go ahead and size this down just a little bit and put it here in the corner. And then hit my check mark to accept that transformation. Process in Photo P. Similar, but we do not have that same eraser. So I'm going to turn on my ski silhouette, move it to the very top, make sure that it's not stuck in the, I don't know where it went right then. Didn't get it up in there. It's kind of hard because you can't see exactly where. Okay, so there it is. I'm going to rasterize it. I'm going to grab my eraser, my background eraser. I'm going to get a pretty big eraser here. And then I'm just going to start out here, click, click. Remember, it's based on the center of my brush. Uh-oh. I didn't get that part at the right time. Okay. Center of my brush. I can't see this part of the silhouette, so it's kind of hard to tell what's gone and what's not. I'll have to use a smaller brush for some of those over there. Okay. Then, of course, and I probably don't have all that, but I cannot tell just yet. There we go. Oops. Don't let that center get into the edges of your brush can touch the stuff, but not the rest of it. Oops. Too much. So much easier in Photoshop, but you know how it be. Okay. Ugh. Anyway, okay, so back to the move tool, turn on those transform controls. I'm probably missing this part over here, but I'm going to hold down shift and pull from this corner. Yeah, we got a little bit here that's not working out. All right, hit enter. And then again, if you need to make any revisions to your erasing, just head to it and do it. There we go. All right, good deal. All right, and so that's where we're at this point. So we're going to stop this session. That's number 2. We have done all of the things for clipping masks. Just remember, you can add layer styles to your clipping masks. You can also transform the shape. So like I could still take my snowflake here that has my sky in it, and I could transform it. I could put those handles on there and I could spin it around, and it will change what part of the picture that I see. So I could still transform the layer, the shape layer, and it won't mess with anything, and then just hit your check mark to complete. And again, when you're seeing all that stuff, it just means you're clicked on there and all the outlines of the path are showing. So just click on the background or anywhere so you can actually see what's happening here. So here's what we should have at this point. Looks like this. And because they're clipping masked, we see that little down arrow pointing in there. And that down arrow is important because that down arrow indicates that there is a clipping mask there, regardless of which program that we're in. Okay, let's move on to session 3.